I spent 7 years saving for my first house. My parents gave it to my golden child sister in less than 3 months. Not legally. Not at first. They did it slowly. A spare key here. A temporary favor there. A few boxes in the guest room. One conversation about how Ashley just needed time to get back on her feet. Then one Friday night, I came home from a work trip and found my clothes packed in cardboard boxes in the hallway. My sister was sleeping in my bedroom. Her boyfriend's truck was in my driveway. And my mother had the nerve to say, "Nathan, don't make this harder than it needs to be." That was the first time I realized my family did not see my house as something I owned. They saw it as something they had not finished taking. Years later, after Ashley lost everything and dragged my parents down with her, they came to me asking for a place to stay. And this time, I did not hand them a key. My name is Nathan Brooks. I was 31 when I bought that house. It was not a mansion. It was not even close. It was a modest 3-bedroom house outside Charlotte, North Carolina, with a small front porch, an old wooden fence, a garage that smelled like motor oil, and a kitchen that needed more work than the seller admitted. But it was mine. That mattered. I had grown up in a family where nothing ever really felt mine. If I had birthday money, my mother would say Ashley needed new shoes. If I had a free Saturday, my father would say Ashley needed help moving. If I bought something nice for myself, Ashley would say, "Must be nice to have your life so easy." Easy, that word followed me around my whole life like a bad joke. Ashley was my younger sister by 3 years. She was pretty, emotional, charming when she wanted to be, and absolutely allergic to consequences. If Ashley was late, traffic was unfair. If Ashley lost a job, the manager was jealous. If Ashley overdrafted her account, the bank was predatory. If Ashley broke up with a boyfriend, he was toxic, and somehow the family needed to help her heal by buying her groceries, paying her phone bill, or letting her borrow a car she would return with an empty tank. My parents had one rule for Ashley. Protect her. They had one rule for me. Understand. Nathan, she's sensitive. Nathan, she's been through a lot. Nathan, you're stronger than she is. Nathan, don't make everything harder. When I was a kid, I thought being strong was something good. As an adult, I learned that in families like mine, strong means you are the one they expect to bend. I worked as a commercial electrician for almost 10 years before moving into project supervision. Long days, early mornings. Job sites with bad coffee and worse weather. I saved aggressively because I wanted one thing no one could touch. A home. Not a family house. Not a place where everybody had an opinion. Mine. I skipped vacations. I drove the same truck until the driver's seat had a tear shaped like Florida. I ate more packed lunches than any grown man should have to admit. I took side jobs on weekends. Panel upgrades, lighting installs, garage wiring, ceiling fans, whatever paid. And finally, after 7 years, I had enough. The first time I walked through the house, I knew. The porch sagged a little on the left side. The backyard fence needed replacing. The guest bathroom had ugly tile from the early 2000s. The kitchen cabinets were scratched. The garage had an old workbench built by somebody who clearly believed measurements were optional. I loved it anyway. I imagined fixing it slowly. New porch boards, a real workshop in the garage, fresh paint, a grill in the backyard. Maybe one day a wife, kids, a dog that would destroy the grass. But even if none of that happened, I would still have a front door that belonged to me. When I told my parents, they congratulated me. Politely, my father, Robert, said, "Good for you. Smart investment." My mother, Linda, said, "It's a lot of space for one person, but I'm glad you're happy." Ashley came to the small housewarming barbecue I threw and walked through every room like she was judging a hotel. 3 bedrooms, she said. "Yeah. For just you?" I looked at her. That's usually how buying a house works. She rolled her eyes. Must be nice. There it was again. Easy. Nice. Lucky. Never earned. Just nice. At the time, I was dating Claire. We had been together about 8 months. She was a nurse, practical, sharp, and not easily impressed by family guilt. She helped me set up the barbecue, carried paper plates to the porch, and watched my family with the quiet focus of someone studying a weather pattern before the storm. After everyone left, she stood in the kitchen while I loaded dishes into the sink. "Your sister doesn't like that you have this," she said. I laughed. "Ashley doesn't like when anyone has anything." Claire did not laugh. "I'm serious." I shrugged. "She'll get over it." Claire looked around the house. "I hope so, but Nathan, be careful. People who feel entitled to your guilt eventually feel entitled to your stuff." I should have listened harder. 3 months later, Ashley lost her apartment. The official story was that her landlord was awful, her roommate was unstable, and her ex-boyfriend had created a hostile environment. The actual story, which I found out later, was that Ashley had not paid her share of rent for 2 months, her roommate was done covering her, And the ex-boyfriend was tired of her using his credit card for emergencies that looked suspiciously like weekend trips and new clothes. My mother called me on a Tuesday night. I remember because I had just gotten home from work, still wearing my boots, standing in the kitchen eating leftover chicken straight from the container like a bachelor cliché. "Nathan," she said, using the soft voice. The soft voice was dangerous. "What happened?" I asked. "Why do you assume something happened?" "Because you used the soft voice." She sighed. "It's Ashley." Of course it was. She's in a bad place. She's always in a bad place. "Nathan. What happened?" "She needs somewhere to stay." I closed the fridge. "No. You haven't even heard me out." "I heard enough. It would only be temporary." "How temporary?" 6 weeks. Maybe 8. I laughed once. "Mom. She has nowhere else to go. She can stay with you." There was a pause. That pause said everything. Then Mom said, "Your father's back has been bothering him, and the house is already crowded with your dad's office equipment, and Ashley needs space to clear her head. My house is not a rehabilitation center for bad decisions." "That's cruel." "No, it's accurate." She started crying, not loudly. "Just enough. You have space, Nathan. She is your sister. Family helps family." I rubbed my forehead. There it was. Family. A word that somehow always meant I had to give something up. Dad got on the phone next. "She just needs time to get back on her feet. She has had 28 years. Watch your mouth. I'm not a child." "No, you're a homeowner. Start acting like it. You have the room. Your sister needs help." I should have said no and meant it. I really should have. But then Mom got back on the phone and said, "You're doing so well. She's struggling. Please don't make her feel unwanted by her own brother." That sentence got me. Because that was always the trap. If I protected myself, I was making Ashley feel unwanted. If I said no, I was selfish. If I had boundaries, I was cold. So I said yes. But I set rules. 6 weeks. Guest room only. No boyfriend staying overnight. No parties. No changing anything in the house. Help with groceries. Respect my work schedule. Ashley agreed to everything. She hugged me when she moved in and said, "I promise I won't be a problem." That was the first lie. At first, she behaved. Mostly. She kept her things in the guest room. She bought groceries once. She even cleaned the kitchen after dinner one night and acted like she had donated a kidney. Then small things started changing. A candle appeared on my coffee table. Then 3 throw pillows I did not buy. Then her makeup migrated into the guest bathroom, then the hallway bathroom, then somehow my bathroom. She left dishes in the sink. She took calls on speakerphone in the living room while I was trying to do project estimates. Her friends came over. Just for a bit. And stayed until midnight. Her boyfriend, Kyle, started dropping by. Kyle was the kind of guy who wore sunglasses indoors and called every man bro because learning names was apparently too much effort. The first time he stayed past midnight, I told Ashley he had to leave. She looked embarrassed. Then angry. "You're really going to kick him out?" "Yes. He's my boyfriend. He's not my tenant." She cried to Mom. By morning, Mom called. "Nathan, did you really embarrass your sister in front of Kyle?" "No." I enforced a rule she agreed to. She is already going through so much. Then she can go through it without Kyle sleeping on my couch. Mom sighed like I was exhausting her. It was one night. It was the first night. That's why I stopped it. Sometimes you are too rigid. That became the new family word. Rigid. I was not tired. Not disrespected. Not being pushed in my own house. Rigid. By week 4, Ashley started complaining about the guest room. "The bed hurts my back. It's too close to the street. The closet is too small. The light hits the window weird in the morning." I told her she had 2 weeks left. She stared at me like I had slapped her. "You're counting?" "Yes. That's how 6 weeks works." She called me cold. I called it a calendar. That weekend, I had to fly to Atlanta for a job site issue. A hospital renovation had electrical conflicts in the ceiling, and my company needed me there through Friday. Before I left, I reminded Ashley of the move-out date. She nodded without looking up from her phone. Yeah, I know. I should have known then." When I landed back in Charlotte Friday night, I was exhausted. I wanted a shower, a beer, and 8 hours of not hearing anyone say conduit. Kyle's truck was in my driveway. That annoyed me, but I was too tired to start with that. Then I opened the front door. My living room looked different. My couch had been moved. There was a pink blanket over the chair. A framed photo of Ashley and Kyle sat on my bookshelf. My bookshelf. I walked down the hallway. 3 cardboard boxes sat outside my bedroom door. My clothes. Folded badly. Thrown into boxes. I opened my bedroom door. Ashley was asleep in my bed. Kyle was asleep beside her. For a second, I just stood there. Not because I was unsure what to do. Because I could not believe the disrespect had become that casual. I turned on the light. Ashley sat up, squinting. What the hell? Kyle groaned. Bro, what? I looked at him. Get out of my bed. Ashley pulled the blanket up. Nathan, don't start. That sentence made something in my chest go cold. My room, now. She rolled her eyes. Mom said we could talk about this. Mom does not own my house. Kyle sat up. Dude, chill. I pointed at him. You have 30 seconds to put your pants on and get out of my house before I call the police. He looked at Ashley. Ashley looked angry, but she knew my face well enough to know I was not playing. Kyle left, muttering something under his breath. Ashley followed me into the hallway. You're being insane. My clothes are in boxes. You weren't using the room this week. I was on a work trip. I needed better sleep. I stared at her. You moved into my bedroom because you needed better sleep? You don't understand what I've been going through. I laughed. I could not help it. She hated that. You think everything is so easy because you have a house and a good job. I have a house and a good job because I worked for them. She folded her arms. You always throw that in my face. No, Ashley. You keep trying to take things, and then you act attacked when someone mentions they belong to them. She called Mom. Of course. Within 30 minutes, my parents were at my house. Not to ask what happened. To manage me. Mom walked in and immediately went to Ashley. Dad looked at the boxes in the hallway. Then at me. Nathan, he said, let's stay calm. I laughed again. That was apparently my new nervous response to betrayal. I am calm. You threatened to call the police on Kyle. Because Kyle was in my bed. Mom said, Ashley needed rest. I looked at her. Do you hear yourself? She's been under emotional stress. And I've been under my mortgage. Dad's jaw tightened. Don't be smart. No, let's be smart. Whose name is on the deed? Mom looked hurt. Why are you making this about ownership? Because it is my house. A house is just walls, she said. Family matters more. I looked at her for a long time. Then why does family always mean I lose something? That shut her up. For about 5 seconds. Then Ashley started crying. I knew he didn't want me here. I turned to her. You were supposed to leave in 2 weeks. Dad frowned. We need to talk about that. No, we don't. Nathan. No, 6 weeks, that was the agreement. Mom said, she needs more time. How much more? Nobody answered. That was answer enough. I looked around my hallway, at my clothes in boxes, at my sister crying in my house like she was the victim, at my parents standing there like I was the problem. That was the night I started documenting everything. I took pictures. The boxes. The moved furniture. The extra belongings. The bedroom. Kyle's truck in the driveway. I saved every text about the 6-week agreement. Every message from Ashley. Every guilt trip from Mom. Every be reasonable from Dad. They thought guilt was stronger than paperwork. That was their mistake. The next few weeks were hell. Ashley moved back to the guest room, but only physically. Emotionally, she treated the entire house like hers. She cooked and left pans soaking for days. She took over the laundry schedule. She invited people over without asking. She left lights on. She complained when I locked my office. She told relatives I was letting her live there for now. For now. Then I heard from a cousin that my mother had told people I was basically giving Ashley the house until she got stable. Basically giving. Not letting. Not temporarily housing. Giving. I called Mom immediately. Did you tell Aunt Carol I gave Ashley my house? Mom sighed. That's not what I said. What did you say? I said you were letting her have the space she needed. That is not the same thing. You're being sensitive. I almost smiled. Sensitive was usually reserved for Ashley. I guess I had finally earned a promotion. Then came the locks. I got home from work on a Wednesday and my key did not work. For a few seconds, I thought I was at the wrong house. That is how ridiculous it felt. Then Ashley opened the door wearing my old college hoodie. Oh. She said. You're home early. I held up my key. Why doesn't this work? She looked away. We changed the locks. We? Mom thought it was safer. I stepped closer. Safer from who? Ashley swallowed. You've been angry. I felt my pulse in my jaw. I called my father. He answered like he already knew. Dad, did you know Ashley changed the locks on my house? He sighed. Nathan, she was scared. Of me? You've been hostile. She moved into my bedroom. That does not justify making her feel unsafe. I looked at the door frame. New lock. New key, my own front door standing there like a stranger. Dad, listen carefully. If a key to my house is not in my hand in the next 15 minutes, I am calling a locksmith, then a lawyer. Silence. Then he said, don't you dare threaten this family. I'm not threatening the family. I'm protecting my property. He hated that word. Property. Because property had records. Family only had guilt. Ashley gave me the key 7 minutes later. She slammed it into my hand and said, "I hope you're proud of yourself." I was not proud. I was awake. The next day, I called a lawyer. Her name was Diane Mercer. She specialized in landlord-tenant disputes and property issues. I sat in her office with a folder full of photos, texts, receipts, mortgage statements, and my deed. She read quietly. Then she looked up and said, "Your sister is not on the deed." "No." "Has she paid rent?" "No." "Written lease?" "No." "Mail delivered there?" "Yes." "Utilities in her name?" "No." She nodded. "You need to stop treating this like a family disagreement. This is a legal occupancy problem." That sentence changed everything. A legal occupancy problem. Not poor Ashley. Not family helps family. Not Nathan, be nice. A problem. With steps, notice, documentation, timeline, enforcement. Diane helped me draft a formal notice to vacate. I handed it to Ashley that Friday. She read the first line, then looked at me like I had become a stranger. "You're evicting me? I'm giving you formal notice to leave." My own brother, my own sister changed the locks on my house. She started crying. I felt nothing. That scared me a little at first. Then it relieved me. My parents exploded. Mom called me heartless. Dad called me shameful. Ashley posted vague quotes online about betrayal and finding out family isn't blood. Relatives messaged me. Aunt Carol said, "You would make your sister homeless?" I replied, "No, I gave her 6 weeks. She gave herself my house." That one got around. Ashley eventually left because Diane made it clear the next step would be court. She did not leave peacefully. She took things that were not hers. A set of tools from my garage. A lamp from the living room. 2 kitchen appliances. Half a box of my late grandmother's old Christmas ornaments that Mom had given me when I moved in. She claimed it was an accident. Funny how accidents always fit in a moving truck. The damage was worse than I expected. Carpet stained. Walls scratched. Guest bathroom cabinet broken. Garage shelves damaged. Backyard full of trash from Kyle and his friends. My bedroom door had a crack near the handle. I stood in the hallway after she left and felt the house around me. It was quiet, but not peaceful. The house felt contaminated. Not physically. Emotionally. Every room had an argument in it. The kitchen where Mom cried to get her way. The hallway where my clothes sat in boxes. The front door where my key stopped working. The bedroom where I realized I had become a guest in the house I paid for. Claire came over that night. She brought takeout, walked through the damage, and did not say, "I told you so." That is how I knew she was a good woman. Instead, she said, "What do you want to do?" I looked around. "I don't know if I can live here anymore." She nodded slowly. "Then don't." So I fixed it. Not for Ashley, not for my parents. For me. I patched walls. Replaced carpet, rebuilt garage shelving. Changed locks. Installed cameras. Repainted the hallway. Then I called a realtor. When my parents found out I was selling, they lost their minds. Dad drove over and stood in my driveway. "You can't sell this house." I stared at him. "Watch me, this is an overreaction." "No. This is ownership." Mom called crying. "How could you sell the family house?" I said, "It was never the family house. It was mine." She whispered, "You're doing this to punish Ashley." "No. I'm doing this because every time I walk through the hallway, I remember my own mother defending someone who put my clothes in boxes." She had no answer. The house sold faster than expected. A young couple bought it. They loved the porch, the garage, and the backyard. The wife talked about planting tomatoes. The husband asked about running power to the workbench. I should have felt jealous. Instead, I felt free. At closing, I signed the papers and handed over the keys. The real keys. Not guilt keys. Not spare keys. Not family access. Mine. Then I moved to Raleigh for a senior project manager position with a commercial construction firm. Claire came with me 6 months later. We rented first, then bought a townhouse together 2 years after that. Smaller than my old house, newer, quieter, with a balcony and a kitchen she loved. No one in my family had a key. That was not negotiable. For almost 4 years, I had peace. Not perfect peace, but real peace. My parents tried calling it first. I blocked Ashley. Limited my parents to text only. Then, when every text became a complaint about how I had broken the family, I stopped responding. Claire and I built our own rhythm. Work. Dinner, weekend hikes. Lazy Sundays. Bills paid. Doors locked. No one crying in my kitchen to steal my boundaries. Ashley's life went exactly how you would expect. Kyle disappeared. Then came another boyfriend. Then a boutique idea. Then a failed online candle business. Then credit card debt. Then my parents co-signed something. Then something else. I heard pieces of it through cousins, mutual friends, and one aunt who loved gossip more than oxygen. My parents sold their house eventually. Mom called it downsizing. Everyone else called it Ashley. They moved into a smaller rental. Then Ashley moved in with them. Then Ashley's debts followed. I did not get involved. That was the new skill I had built. Not getting involved. People think boundaries are loud. They are not. Most of the time, boundaries are just not picking up the phone. Then, 5 years after I sold my house, my mother called from a number I did not recognize. I answered because I was waiting for a subcontractor. Nathan? I froze. Mom. She started crying immediately. I almost hung up. Not because I hated her. Because I knew that sound. That was not a mother missing her son. That was a woman arriving at a bill. We don't have anywhere else to go, she said. I closed my office door. What happened? It's complicated. It always is. She cried harder. Dad got on the phone. His voice was older now. Nathan. We need help. I sat down. What kind? A place to stay. Just for a little while. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because life has a sick sense of humor. How little? Dad sighed. Don't start. Then don't lie. Mom took the phone back. We just need time to get back on our feet. There it was. The same phrase. The same script. Only the actors were older. I said, I'll meet you tomorrow at the diner off Capitol Boulevard. Mom sounded relieved. You mean at your house? No. The diner. Nathan. The diner or nothing. They chose the diner. Claire asked if I wanted her to come. I said yes. The next morning, my parents walked into the diner looking smaller than I remembered. Mom's hair had more gray. Dad's shoulders had dropped. They looked tired, embarrassed, and still somehow offended by the fact that life had consequences. Claire sat beside me. My mother glanced at her, then at me. Hello, Claire. Linda. Dad sat down heavily. For a moment, nobody spoke. The waitress brought coffee. I waited. Dad started. We lost the rental. How? He looked at Mom. Mom looked at her hands. Ashley had some financial trouble. Claire's jaw tightened. I asked, what did she do? Mom said, she didn't mean for it to get this bad. That told me enough. Ashley had convinced them to co-sign loans for her boutique. Then used their credit cards. Then failed to pay rent. Then disappeared for 2 weeks with some new boyfriend. Then came back crying. Then left again. The landlord finally refused to renew. My parents had burned through savings helping her. Now they had nowhere stable to go. Where is Ashley? I asked. Mom hesitated. With a friend. I nodded. So Ashley has somewhere to sleep. Dad said, that's temporary. And you want to stay with me temporarily? Mom reached across the table. I moved my hand. She stopped. Nathan. Please. We are still your parents. I looked at her. You were still my parents when Ashley changed the locks on my house. Her face crumpled. Dad frowned. We made mistakes. No, I said. You made choices. Claire sat quietly. But I could feel her beside me. Solid. Present. Not rescuing me. Not speaking for me. Just there. Dad said, are you really going to hold on to that forever? I looked at him. You mean the time you helped my sister take over my house? We didn't take it over. I laughed once. Dad flinched. My clothes were in boxes. Mom whispered, Ashley was struggling. She is always struggling. That does not make everything around her available. Dad's voice hardened. We need a place to stay. No. Mom stared at me. Just one word, and she looked like she had not understood English. No? She repeated. No. Dad leaned forward. You would let your own parents sleep in a shelter? I am not making you sleep anywhere. I am declining to give you access to my home. Mom started crying. Claire finally spoke. Nathan can give you a list of housing resources. Mom looked offended. Housing resources? Yes, Claire said calmly. Short-term rentals, assistance programs, senior housing options. Practical help. Dad glared at her. This is family business. Claire did not blink. Exactly. That's why boundaries matter. I loved her so much in that moment. Mom turned back to me. I cannot believe this is who you have become. That used to hurt. This time, it clarified things. I leaned forward. You gave my home to the daughter you chose. Now go ask her where you're supposed to sleep. Mom gasped. Dad's face went red. That is cruel. No. I said. Cruel was standing in my hallway while my belongings were in boxes and telling me not to make things harder. Cruel was treating my mortgage like Ashley's recovery plan. Cruel was changing the locks on my house and expecting me to apologize for being angry. Dad looked away. Mom cried into a napkin. I already gave this family a house once, I said. You called it Ashley's fresh start. Neither of them answered. Because there was no answer, I slid a folder across the table. Claire had helped me put it together the night before. Short-term rental listings. Extended stay hotels. A local housing nonprofit. Financial counseling. Legal aid. A senior assistant's office. Dad stared at it. That's it? That's more than you gave me when I came home and my key didn't work. Mom whispered. You really won't take us in? No. For how long? I almost smiled. She still thought no was a negotiation. Forever. That was the last time we had a real conversation. Ashley sent me a long message that night from a new number. She called me selfish. Heartless. A bad son. She said Mom had cried all day. She said Dad's blood pressure was high. She said I should be ashamed. I replied once. Family respects the door. Access only looks for the key. Then I blocked her. Relatives reached out. Aunt Carol said, you only get one mother. I wrote back. And she only had one chance to defend my home. She chose Ashley. Blocked. A cousin said, you're punishing them for helping your sister. I replied, no. I'm refusing to repeat the lesson. Blocked. My parents found a small apartment through one of the resources in the folder. Not glamorous. Not comfortable. But safe. Ashley did not move in with them. That part told me everything. She had taken from them until they had nothing useful left. Then found another couch. The daughter they chose was still choosing herself. And for once, so was I. That night, I stood in the kitchen of the townhouse Claire and I owned together. She was making tea. I was leaning against the counter, staring at nothing. You okay? She asked. I thought about it. Yeah. You sure? I nodded. I feel sad. But not guilty. She smiled softly. That sounds healthy. Feels weird. Healthy usually does at first. I looked around our home. Our real home. There were no boxes of my clothes in the hallway. No boyfriend's truck in the driveway. No mother crying in the living room. No father telling me to be reasonable while standing on my boundaries. Just quiet. Warm lights. Locked doors. The life I had built after learning that a house is not just walls. It is safety. It is choice. It is the right to decide who comes in and who does not. My first house taught me ownership. Losing it taught me boundaries. Walking away taught me peace. My parents gave my house to my golden child sister because they said she needed it more. Years later, when she had taken everything they had too, they came back and said they needed me. But I had finally learned the difference between family and access. Family respects the door. Access only looks for the key, so I kept my door closed. And for the first time in my life, home finally felt like mine. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you really like our videos, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day.